and then I awoke from that experience. So basically what that plant did was it's a circuitoxin that shut down my peripheral nervous system. And basically what happens is from the neck down, I have no control, and it basically suffocated me to death. But during that time of losing my breathing, I remembered a practice about just laying down, and almost like in yoga and shavasana, we lay down and we feel our breath slowly entering the body. I kind of went into the space where I said, you know what, just remember that practice, remember that breath, and slow the breath down in a way that the breath, I could feel basically the substance or the essence of breath coming into my body. And when I did that, I started to lose that fear, lose that resistance to the place that I didn't want to go. And because in the mind, that place was death. So I kind of surrendered into the moment and breathing. And when I felt that breath come into the body, it's when everything started to kind of shift. And that's when I left my actual physical body. So when I left my actual physical body, I was floating on top of myself. So now for a recap, I was actually in the hospital looking at myself on the table, and I could actually see the nurses prodding my veins. So one particular nurse, actually, she was prodding my veins and she couldn't find my veins because my veins are quite small. And I could see this particular nurse and how she was handling it and how she was getting frustrated. And so when I did come back to consciousness, I could actually tell my folks that there was this nurse that was in the room that was poking and prodding me, that I could feel that maybe she didn't have an awareness of, but maybe she should like relook at how she's treating patients that are actually unconscious, because we're not actually unconscious, we're still here. And so I could describe how she looked when she came into the room, what she was doing. And so in that space, when I left my body, I was everywhere and then also here, but not in the density of the physical body. So the way in which it felt to leave the body was extreme, full peace. So once that resistance to the fear of death was diminished, that tangible feeling of like deep, nurturing peace, almost like you had the biggest hug from the most safest person in the whole world holding you. That's when I was starting to witness the reality that was happening in the 3D dimension below me happening, but I was stepped back, sort of like in a witness place, watching all that happen from that space of deep peace. So that's one layer of when I left my body. I was sort of sitting in this space where I just felt like there was nothing that I needed to do. There was no thing, there was no way of being, there was nothing to think about. It was just that there was a witnessing of what was and what is. And so that was an aspect of what I believe God is. But there are many aspects to what God is, because it's such a multidimensional, multifaceted form. So there was that. And then after that experience, I went into this place where I kept rising and met myself into a place where there was total, like 100% darkness. So like the darkest dark hole that you could ever conceptualize. Like there was no body, there was no anything. It was just immersion in this limited space, this limitless space, and this space of complete contentment. And then when I was in this darkness, I just could feel like the vastness of everything, almost as if I was sitting in the vastness of consciousness. And when I went into the darkest, darkest, darkest place, at the end of that darkest place was a small white light. And now in this way, explaining this, there's no such thing as time, because it was just all these aspects of self and moments existing all together at once in this tiny white light that shone so brightly that it immersed my entire essence, I want to say, in that space with this rapturous light that kind of like shook me to the point of like stillness, but I wasn't a body anymore. So if you imagine me as a consciousness or an essence, it was like I was rapturing or shaking to a point of actual complete expansion, but there was complete stillness in that. Like I can't really explain it in any other way. It's just like complete aliveness. And immersed in peace, but there's nothing to do, nowhere to go, just that space. And from that experience, I then had a witnessing of all these faces all at once in 1 second. So it was past, present, future, if you want to put a timeline on it, of all of these faces of people that had ever loved me, would love me in this moment, and would ever love me in the future. And it all happened so fast. It's like in 1 second, I could see everything. And then in that space, I just felt love, tremendous love. And that love actually vacuumed me back into my body.